Oh, God damn it. Thank you, Christian.
Sorry, I had to start it off.
Welcome to Pandora's Box. This is the podcast where we talk about our favorite fandoms in terms of our thoughts, theories, opinions. We also like to do a little production analysis as well as story dissection. My name is Tyler Gardner, and as you're well aware, I am joined as always by my friend and co-host Christian Almonte. I think he couldn't decide if he was actually going to introduce himself or make another fucking noise, but...
Oh, man. Well, it's because I did have an Avatar themed opening planned out, but that just completely shut off my brain.
Alright, let's hear it. What do you got?
It was something stupid. It was like something like, it was like an Iroh quote or something. I don't know.
Oh.
But we're back.
Okay. So as Christian said, we are breaking into a new segment, which I still don't know what it's called. I don't think we had a title for this segment. But regardless,
it's gonna look like we're so unprepared.
I know. Yeah, so with breaking into this untitled segment, but as Christian had already mentioned, we are going to be speaking of Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is a phenomenal show. In my opinion, one of the best I've seen in most cases. I think it was one of the most highest ranked animated shows or things of that nature.
It literally has 3 A's in its name.
Yeah, it's AAA. Absolutely.
For sure.
So, Christian, I have a question for you, because we're the same age. We both...
we literally are only 2 months apart. It's crazy.
So I'm assuming we experienced this show at the same time, because at that time when it came out, this was straight either cable or... Yeah, cable. Like, there was no streaming services. This was the type of shit where you had to wait for the next episode to come about.
Yeah, and sometimes it wasn't always in sequence. Sometimes you really had to get bits and pieces of it. Because for me specifically, I did not get cable at the very premiere of Avatar. So I was not episodically or chronologically rather, caught up. Like, it wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, I would get chunks. So I would get episode 2, 3, 4. Then suddenly 7, 8, 9. Then we're back to 1. So I really had to inform myself until the second and third seasons happened, where I was a bit more regular and able to interpret it. But in those originally, it was a Wild West back then, man.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't like you just be like, Netflix, are you still watching? Go on to the next episode in one click. This was
no, it's like
sometimes
you're
you would
watching.
have to wait weeks.
It's like you're watching, then there's a commercial break, and you have 30 seconds to a minute to get all your shit done before the show pops up again. Yeah. Because if you miss shit, you've missed it until you might have a chance to watch it again if they do a rerun. And
I was telling Tyler another time, when it comes to the Avatar shows, these things were compact. It would be 20 minutes of a lot of shit would happen in 20 minutes. And nowadays we're spoiled with hundreds of people on a production set that are doing 45-minute episodes of The Mandalorian, goddamn hour-long minutes of Game of Thrones or whatever. So Avatar was really it was serialized in the sense that you had to fit that slot on Cartoon Network. That was a half-hour slot with commercials, 11 minutes of commercials or whatever. So you had to fit a lot in there, and I think they did it probably the best. I think in terms of actually constrained, because even some great shows I love Naruto. That's one of my main prolific things that I love on here. Naruto doesn't keep things concise at all. Naruto will have a fight scene over several episodes.
Well, that's also an anime thing versus I think the argument with Avatar is it's not an anime simply because it came from the West and it wasn't structured like an anime. You'll have a fight in one episode and it'll be finished that episode.
Yeah. But I think it's just a testament to Avatar for being able to give that same level of excitement in a fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
As longer-winded ones.
Oh yeah, so. Especially when they the build up too, because sometimes they will give you a little bit of build up and you'll get just as pumped.
Oh yeah.
So speaking to this, we might have already answered a little bit. My question I have for you was, where were you when Avatar started? How did you feel about it when you first started watching it? Did you kind of recognize it for how good it was? How did that go about for you? I think you said you hadn't started with, you didn't have cable when it first aired?
Yeah, no, I wasn't, I didn't start chronologically from episode 1, 001. I had that's interesting actually, because a lot of my series that we discuss on this show, that we've already discussed on the show, I actually do have a bit of a origin story where I remember specifically which episode and all that stuff. I was so young when Avatar, was a bang, it was probably 6th grade, 7th grade that we were really getting into the main nitty gritty of Avatar. because it had already been out for a while, but that was like really
Yeah, I would say we were most likely
everyone was
fourth
into it.
grade when it first came out.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of the first episodes, like I don't remember. I think I just remember loving it immediately. I don't remember ever having to think about whether or not I liked it. It was just one of those things where I'm like, this is awesome. This is really cool. And I remember looking forward to it every time it came on. And even if I'd seen, I mean, this is, I feel like this is always the case where when you see the reruns, there's always an episode that you're going to see way more than the other episodes.
Yeah.
But that was one of those things because I used to complain about that. Like if I saw the same episode of SpongeBob
And then you're like, oh,
every day, I'm like, okay, I just can't watch
Jesus,
this. Like I used to enjoy this, but I can't watch this.
Didn't they
anymore.
make other episodes?
Yeah. I'm starting to believe they didn't make it past season 1. But with Avatar, I never complained about watching another episode, the same episode, because each one was just so.
I will cut you off and counter that. There was one Avatar episode that I saw so many times that I fucking hate.
Oh.
Great Divide. I saw that episode so many goddamn times. I got so sick of seeing it.
Which one was that one about?
That was the one where I cannot recall exactly. It was season 1. I can't recall exactly the premise of where they were from the first episode to the next episode, but the premise of the entire episode was Aang was bringing these.
Was it the mole people, the giant moles or whatever, and you got the weird musician guys, and like the one woman's pregnant? Because I saw that one a lot, and then Katara had to help give birth or whatever.
Oh no! That wasn't this one.
Because that was such a random episode.
Yeah, this one was Aang, or the Avatar group was escorting this group, two separate villages that were completely at odds with each other. And then when you look at them, one village was super clean and pristine and followed the rules of an orderly society, versus the other village was ruffians, essentially barbarians kind of thing, and they were just butting heads, but they both had to go through the same place at the same time for whatever reason. So it was so dumb too, because by the end of the episode, spoiler, Aang was like, oh yeah, I know the two people that led your villages, and he made up this whole bullshit about why their villages started to argue in the first place. But the whole episode was just it was okay, but the ending was terrible, and then I saw it too many times. That was the one episode I saw every fucking time I turned the TV. It's got sickening.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would.
So maybe that's why I didn't complain about, because I didn't see that episode that often. So that's probably why.
That's the only one that I remember. I still to this day when I go through it on Netflix, I skip that fucking episode.
You're like, all right, episode 11, all right, 13 it is.
Yeah, to tell you what it is. We're gonna watch it 12 to 14. Yeah.
All right, well, let us dive in, my friend.
Absolutely. So I'm sure the question on maybe a couple of listeners' minds is, what is Avatar: The Last Airbender? Avatar: The Last Airbender was a cartoon that aired on the Nickelodeon channel. It was started in February 2005 and concluded in July of 2008. The show itself is set...
Wow, 2008.
Yep.
That's crazy. It concluded before the 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy to think about, honestly.
Yeah, the show itself is set in an Asiatic-inspired world. The world itself is thus far unnamed, much like with Naruto. Probably
with
a couple
Kenshi.
Kenshi, yeah. We don't know the name.
The
of
nameless
actual
consonants.
Yeah. In this world, there are people who can telekinetically manipulate the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, air. And then there is one individual that can utilize all 4 elements, called the Avatar. Hence the name of the ship. The world is also populated by people who cannot bend the elements, so normal people like you and I and everybody else listening.
Standard pedestrian.
I actually came across something, and I'm not sure where it's sourced, but there's some general consensus that about 30% of the world is populated by benders. I didn't go too much into reading about that. I just kind of scrolled it. I saw it in a couple places when I was pulling facts together for this episode, so I'm going to assume it's true, but again, I'm not exactly sure where they got the information from.
I think that's an interesting point, because I feel like logistically it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot more sense for there to be less benders than there are, standard humans.
Yeah.
I think the reason why we don't see that percentage divide that often is because, it is, originally a kid's show. So,
right.
You kind of have to keep that entertained mind of a young person constantly.
The 7-year-old's not like, I love lore.
Yeah. I would like to go into the political, economic background of the human society versus the...
Wait, did they ever take a census? What is the actual...
I would like to know about
population numbers.
The makeup of the people that don't do any action whatsoever.
Yeah. Cabbage Man, what's his story?
I would like to know his family's background and how they came to this land. It's like, oh god. So yeah, I can understand why that wasn't made apparent
Yeah.
for us back in the day.
Yeah, and again, I'm not exactly sure where the information was pulled from. It seemed legitimate, seeing as how it was popping up on multiple sources when I was researching different things of it. So,
and it makes sense because you had the
yeah, when you look at the show,
the Water Tribe, you had a lot of people that were like Sokka that were just
yeah.
I would never call Sokka an average Joe, but average Joes of that sense.
Yeah, non-benders.
Yeah.
Regardless of how cool they are, the non-benders.
Yeah, it's not a big reach, is my point.
So speaking into bending, which is a huge part of the show, not just because of the titular character, but simply the majority of the main characters are also benders. Go ahead.
And when we're saying bending, that's what it's called, because the manipulation of elements is called a bender.
Bending.
So if you are able to manipulate air, you are an air bender.
Yeah.
Or so on and so forth.
Water. Yep. All the same. Exactly.
You're not physically bending stuff.
So
although I guess some people in earth bending do bend stuff.
Yeah.
With their
not a legitimate bending, but the manipulation of is transcribing.
Yeah, bending. That actually threw me off as a kid.
What's that?
The concept of bending.
Because
I'm like, at what point do they bend? I wasn't a very smart kid.
Yeah, well.
Alright, sorry to cut you off. Let's continue.
Throughout the series, you learned a somewhat scattered history of the origin of bendings. So, like, for example, you learn that air bisons, which are one of the animals you see a lot in the show, they are the originators of airbending. Badger moles are the first for earth bending, so on and so forth.
It is really cool, though, that I actually, believe it or not, I didn't know that, about the badgers are the founders of...
Oh, the badger moles? Yeah. Yep.
Because they were always cool and very enigmatic. They're very much like, they had the same kind of energy as in, like, D&D and other high fantasies, like the concept of the worms, like these massive worms that burrow underground and stuff.
Oh yeah, and they just do the thing.
They're not really considered evil. They just literally are absurdly powerful, strange creatures that no one knows about. And I thought that was the same thing with the badgers, where you're like, whoa, these things are like dope as hell, but we barely even see them or know anything about them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot of shit like this of that nature in the show, which is so fun.
Which is awesome too, especially because given how short each episode is, the flavor that's in there, and you're constantly wanting more, which I always loved about it.
Well, hopefully we're going to give you a little bit more today. I'm going to give everybody else listening just a little bit more of a taste. So, the bending arts that are seen in the show, those are based off real world martial arts. So, water bending is based off of Tai Chi. The inspiration was taken from Tai Chi's fluidity, connectivity, and adaptability. All which are fundamental. Redirection, but redirection is going to go into a little more of another bending, which we'll talk about in a second. Earth bending, which I believe is Christian's favorite.
It is my favorite.
Is based off of Hungar Kung Fu. The inspiration was taken from Hungar's low stances, rooted power, and strength. Firebending is a little interesting. Firebending isn't based off of a standard or a title named martial art. It's based off of just northern style Shaolin Kung Fu. In particular, Northern Shaolin highlighted fire in the sense that the element has many manifestations.
Now, this might be a bit of a tangent.
Sure.
But is Northern Shaolin, is that only practiced by Shaolin monks, or can anyone practice that kind of kung fu?
Good question. I'm not exactly certain. I know there are some styles that certain temples will probably keep hidden, but like in this day and age, it's very tough to not be able to figure out or find or learn any style.
Because I was going to say that would be interesting if they actually went to like a Shaolin temple to learn for this animated show, because that's dedication.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there's really cool things like with the Shaolin and the firebending. When you look at it, it's a very powerful dynamic footwork. You have arrow-like forward attacking techniques, feather-like retreating techniques.
That's why some of the coolest fight scenes was in the street when like Zuko and Azula are trying to firebend each other. You see like two siblings that are like masters of fire. Like,
it's so cool.
It is wild to see. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody,
and Hank just throws himself in there every once in a while. That's what I always found funny about those scenes, is that you have like this really gritty sibling rivalry about dishonor and like revenge and all these things. Then you have Aang's just floaty ass.
I am bald.
You're like, I'm just trying to not be here.
I don't want to fight. Speaking of, airbending is based off of Bagua Zhang. Bagua Zhang utilizes light circle walking techniques, and they also developed the 8 trigram palm technique. The fundamental concept of
I wonder if that has to do with the Naruto, with 8 trigram 64 palm that Nenji uses.
Oh yeah, a lot of martial arts within anime and cartoons are based off of, like, we'll say, methods and styles from martial arts, especially with the Asiatic shows. Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So like with where they are bending, you have the shifts and rotations of their center to counteract resistance and attack. So as you talked about with the redirection, that could apply to water bending for sure, but it definitely applies to air bending because if you think about it, airbenders, they don't actually really have any attack moves whatsoever. Versus water bending could actually be used for offensive, much more so than airbending.
What did you say the name was for the airbending martial art?
Bagwanzang.
Oh, I've never heard of that. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
kind
cool.
of
You should look into it. Yeah,
Good.
Bagwanzang, Choi Li Foot, those are some ones that are just like, they're kind of out there, but they're really, really cool.
Word.
So the world of Avatar is divided into 4 separate civilizations, with each nation being related to one of the 4 elements. So you have the Fire Nation, Earth Kingdom, Water Tribes, Air Nomads. Pretty easy to figure out which element goes with what nation.
That's what I was gonna fucking open up with. Water Tribe. Damn it. Missed my fucking chance to blow. Eminem would be disappointed.
He's already disciplined, yeah.
He already is disappointed.
So the nations, while they are distinct because of the element that they represent, they're also simply very distinct in the people that inhabit these nations and how the actual nation is set up and how it's thrived through the centuries. I'm going to go into a little bit of that right now. So we have the Fire Nation. It is ruled by the Fire Lord, regardless of the time period. Well, not regardless of the time period, but at a certain point they do enact the Fire Lord. I don't think it matters. I'm not sure if it had to be a man. It seems like in some cases it could be a woman.
And I honestly don't even know if it was like a family monarch system.
It's in the time of the show it was for sure, and even going into Korra.
So was Sozin Ozai's father?
Ozai's grandfather.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Sozin, Azulon, Ozai.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that answers one of the questions.
Yeah, and then
wish I could help you with the other one.
I think going into Korra, they kept that going, and I believe Zuko, even though he was still alive at the time of Legend of Korra, he had ceded the throne to his daughter, I believe. Could be wrong. That's the only reason why I think it could be male or female. I'm not sure what it was like pre-Avatar: The Last Airbender series. The Fire Nation had the most industrialized and technologically advanced nation. They were like that prior to the show starting, and they also have the most powerful economy in the world due to the technological advancements. And they're also the second largest nation in terms of the area.
Number 1, I'm assuming, is Earth.
You got it, yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking of, Earth Kingdom, ruled by the Earth Monarch, not necessarily king, so it seems like it could be king or queen, much like the Fire Lord. There was nothing stating that it was specifically Earth King at any point, just depicted as Earth Monarch.
Whoever's predominant in the bloodline.
Yeah. I'm not even sure if that was... I don't even think that's...
Oh, so it wasn't even like...
It doesn't seem like it. I mean, the history of the Earth Kingdom, I'm not going to go too much into it, but the history of the Earth Kingdom is so full of strife and things like that. It seems like at some point they were like elected as king. It's a lot. There's a lot going on.
For those out there that are also adamant followers of our video game series, we haven't gotten into this episode yet. If we end up doing it, but there is a video game out there called Crusader Kings 3, which is very good. It's interesting. It actually came from a video game studio known as Paradox. There you go, Paradox Interactive. The reason why I bring it up is because Crusader Kings 3 is a historical game based a lot about the medieval age, and they actually have brought in like legitimate scholars and educators about that time period. So everything there is hyper realistic up until the way that things were passed down from bloodlines, and how all these different inheritance things were funded and operated. And so it's kind of interesting that you say that it's not quite medieval either. So it's like we don't quite know how the bloodline works in terms of the monarch of the Earth Kingdom. Yeah,
well, the Earth Kingdom itself, as I said, there was so much strife and conflict, even up until not too much before the Avatar series. So it's kind of tough to discern because there was a big point where they didn't have a king. They weren't even like a conjoined nation. So write that down, don't forget it. Back to the Earth Kingdom, it is the largest, most populated nation, as Christian had said, tagging off with the Fire Nation being the second largest. The Earth Kingdom is actually also the most culturally diverse nation. So if you look at the Air Nomads, they're all monks. You look at the Water Tribe, they're all pretty much the same culturally speaking. Even the Fire Nation, they're all very much the same. But the Earth Kingdom, you can go to different areas of the Earth Kingdom, and there will still be people that kind of disagree with how their lives are lived, how religions are believed. Even in...
You got the Kyoshi warriors, you got the Cabbage Man. very different
Well,
mentalities.
Cabbage supersedes all
No,
boundaries. He's like the Avatar. But which is cool because you'll have people that
He's Mr. Worldwide.
just because 305. Just because like you visit somebody in like the northernmost reach of the Earth Kingdom doesn't mean they're going to go along with what's going on in the Earth Kingdom in the southern region, which is kind of cool to think about. Where it's like not everyone's on the same page just because they're all from the same nation.
And to take a couple steps back in terms of the Fire Nation, you said that they had the strongest economy.
Mm-hmm.
Was that in part because, if I remember correctly, the continent of Avatar is kind of archipelagical in the sense that there are like a lot of islands, and was it because the Fire Nation controlled kind of the sea transport a little bit more? So in terms of trade and all that stuff?
So I didn't go too much into looking into how it was. It just seemed like across the board that was the case. Especially, I think it mostly happened because they were the most technologically advanced like the entire time. Like everybody was progressing technologically, except for I would say the air nomads. And then at one point it was like you had the Fire Nation, Earth Kingdom competing for like the strongest economy, and then the Earth Kingdom, due to like all their bullshit and strife and conflicts that they had going on, they fell off the wagon, and then that allowed the Fire Nation to claim that spot. As to why exactly, it could be part of that. I think mostly the technological advancements just allowed for them to create things more efficiently. So like you're talking like natural resource economy. So farming, fishing, weapons at any point because they all still need weapons for whatever reason. Things of that nature.
There are no iPads in Boston, say.
There are no iPads anywhere.
The technological advancement joke.
Yeah, not that clever.
That was a reach.
This is a BlackBerry.
Alright, you know what? We're gonna go to war with all of you now.
And the last thing on the Earth Kingdom was, of all the nations, they seem to have the most conflicted, or their history had the most internal conflict of any of the other nations. It seemed like they had to spend the most time getting their shit together.
Yeah, well, based on the character archetypes of the show, that makes a lot of sense because, the Earth Nation, they are all very, very like, thematic because, it's with the rocks, and, rocks are firm and don't budge. They were all very stubborn and, hard-headed, so I think
which would also speak to, like, the cultural diversity throughout the nation, which you do see that in a lot of... You have... there was one episode, I can't remember what season it was, but you see Earth Kingdom soldiers guarding and protecting, but also, like, taking advantage of the town they were supposed to be protecting, which seemed very Fire Nation, even though they were Earth Kingdom soldiers.
Exactly.
And now we're heading into the Water Tribe. Water Tribe's kind of interesting. It's not just one contiguous locale as the first two nations, the Fire and Earth Kingdom, were. The Water Tribe comprises of the two sister tribes. So you have the Northern Water Tribe, Southern Water Tribe, and then I guess the Foggy Swamp Tribe people. They're also
they're technically water tribes.
They're considered within the tribal system.
I always thought they were one of the coolest.
They are, yeah.
Entities of all time.
Absolutely. But both of the North and South are ruled by the chief of the Northern Tribe, even though they kind of exist co-independently of each other.
Yeah, because technically, I guess you would say that the Northern and the Southern tribes are the furthest away from national, in terms of structure from any other nation. So they kind of have vastly different communication standards.
Yeah. So I mean, prior to the war, they had regular communication. I still think they were ruled and did their own thing separate of each other, but if there were any changes to, let's say, the surrounding culture or like how the water tribes are going to do things, it would always come from the north down.
Gotcha. Okay.
Throughout history, they've always been peaceful and just chill with everybody. They've tried to live in harmony. I didn't find a lot of information about any internal conflicts or struggles that the water tribe had when they started out. And then...
Which there is a certain amount of suspension of disbelief because it is, a younger person show because, they are based off of, the people living in the Arctic circles that are like constantly struggling to survive and like stabbing seals and like trying to eat anything that they can. Meanwhile, these guys are like skiing on penguins. And
yeah, they're just chilling.
So we
just live in the snow. It's fine.
I feel like that's the natural course though, because if you remove that necessitation for like, oh God, we're gonna die because we're hungry. If you remove that, suddenly it's kind of, a pretty peaceful existence. Yeah. You're far away from everybody else. You can just vibe with your friends.
Exactly. Disconnected.
So it makes sense that, from the lack of survival strife, you're able to kind of make your whole nation into a kind of a more relaxed state. So
good point.
It's a cool hypothesis.
And last touch on for the Water Tribe, they have one of the least powerful economies. They don't really have much of an economy. Their economy is dependent entirely on the ocean, so fishing. If you look at the water tribes, they are quite literally in the North and South Pole, so they really don't have any other resources to trade and export and import.
Was it book 1 that they went into that whole pirate arc for a little bit?
They might have said something, but I don't know if you're speaking of the raiders that took Qatar's mom. I mean, are you speaking of the ones where she got the water tribe scroll from?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know how much they knew of the water tribe. I'd have to go back to that episode, even if there is further history. That could have simply been that they just got that somewhere. The pirates, dude.
Gotcha. The reason why I was bringing that up is because I was like wondering if that might be like a thing, if they were like raiding on like ship transports from the water tribe.
Yeah, so you're speaking of that to that point, because at this point I would say there are only 2 nations that have any serious water control, because at one point it was only the water tribe that actually was utilizing the water in such a way until
because they had to
until the Fire Nation developed their steam powered ships, and that they ended up turning into the controlling force.
They became basically the British Empire.
And those pirates, and I don't think any pirates are gonna actually try and take a fucking battleship over.
Where literally every person on the boat can spit fire at you.
It's also like 1,000-ton battleship, and they're sailing up in like a galleon. It's like
a light sloop.
Well, you raised a good point, because the one I think for waterfaring brigands. They're gonna go after water tribe because that's an easier mark.
It's an easier, for sure.
And that's all there short of the swamp. That's all coastal villages. So makes sense.
Especially in the wartime, because the vast concentration
of
the water tribe, is out fighting. So like,
no security.
If it's just a regular fisherman with no powers versus like,
you're done.
Yeah.
Give me that scroll.
I will commandeer this, sir.
All right, going into our last nation, we have the Air Nomads. The Air Nomads are a fully monastic order. They live throughout 4 temples located on each corner of the globe. So you have north, south, east, west, and there's an air temple at each one of those directions. They are the only nation that are comprised completely of benders. So every single person in the Air Nomad is known to bending. I found some interesting information about that. I'm going to give you a little tidbit because I didn't do any further research into it, because I think it's really cool. There's something about, because they were wondering what allows people to be benders or not. Obviously, there's something to do with genetics, sure. But they're wondering like what it takes for.
But why did Sokka as a brother not get it when Katara as a sister got it?
So there's some theories out there that speak to the spirituality of the person themselves that allow bending, and you see that kind of persevered through the entire culture, the entire nation. So the Air Nomads are the most spiritually enlightened of any other nation whatsoever, and they think that's what has to do with all of them being benders. And then you have the Water Tribe. They're a little more spiritual, so they might have a greater percentage of benders versus non-benders. And then the Earth Kingdom, who actually has the least percentage of benders per like capita, so to speak, than any other nation. They're the least spiritual. I haven't gone too much further into it, so that's the only information I have. So there might be something
mildly similar to how the young people in Star Wars, you'll have a lot of young people that like are force sensitive, but and not until you kind of live that lifestyle can you actually call upon the force to do things.
This is more so like if you're born with enough. That's more like, are you born with enough midichlorians to actually harness the force? Versus like this, it's like depending on your spirituality, could you eventually develop bending, or if it, like your parents weren't spiritual, that bleeds through kind of a thing. Again, I haven't done too much research into it. That is literally the only thing I found, was there might be some connection to the level of spirituality versus the level or the percentage of bending. And that's actually touched upon a little bit in Korra, so I'm kind of interested. That's something I want to delve into, because I want to do an episode, obviously, on like bending itself.
They most definitely do not say a word of that in the actual series itself.
Not at all.
That'd be interesting to get into through exterior sources.
Oh, absolutely.
I meant external sources, just the concept of exterior sources. Some guy standing outside your house. Hey, this is what it is. Guess
what? Bending's based on spirituality.
Get out of my yard.
Yeah, thank you. Now leave. They have the Air Nomads. They have the smallest population and economy of all nations. Their only economy is some sort of agricultural means, but that's it.
They also have the weirdest locations.
So it doesn't seem like the Air Nomads have actual cut lines of where their quote-unquote nations or temples begins. They're located in temples basically mostly like within the Earth Kingdom lands and things of that nature. and all their temples are either high on mountains in some regard or another, so they make it very, very hard for outsiders to be able to get to their temples.
Yeah. In fact, I'm actually almost positive that the Fire Nation wouldn't have been as successful as they were without the invention of the hot air balloons that they make. Because like some of them are like way high that you'd have to like they'd see you a mile if you walked there.
So it's interesting because the air balloons weren't around when they attacked the air nomads. So I'm kind of curious how they were able to get to the
temples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good question because during the season.
Because logistically, you're like, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, there has to be, I suppose, some way for outsiders to get there, but if there wasn't, how'd they do that? The air nomads, they've been peaceful, much like the water tribe. They've been peaceful throughout their history, and they've attempted to stay isolated from world affairs. In some certain instances throughout world history, they've actually purposely completely cut themselves out from world events to stay isolated and keep out of things. The story of Avatar: The Last Airbender centers around a war that was instigated by the Fire Nation 100 years prior to the show's beginning.
Even though they'll deny it.
The Fire Nation went to war against quite literally the other three nations in an attempt to kind of take over the entire world.
Literally decided to throw hands at three nations all at the same time.
And there was a disappearance of the Avatar around the very same time as the start of the war. The air nomads were killed off at the very start of the war, and we're going to go into why, but that is why when you watch the show you don't see any airbenders because they were all genocided
at the very beginning. I was going to say, I think it's a good thing to really accent that point because it wasn't just elimination of like the warriors of the air tribe. No, it was a genocide of everybody.
Yeah, but they didn't even have warriors. It was like they killed every single one.
I know, but it wasn't just like the
men, but it was the women and the children. Yeah.
Yeah, no, second episode of Star Wars they did that.
So that could have been a bit of the reason why the air nomads kind of fucked themselves because they weren't really you didn't see air nomads live anywhere else short of the temples, and like they never really stayed anywhere. I mean, let's say they would probably excursion somewhere to stay, but they would always come back. So
I mean, it was very to the credit of the creators. I mean, they obviously based them highly around. Actual monks in East Asian countries who literally will live in one area for virtually their whole lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the theme was. It might not make sense to us Westerners, but it gets
Well, it was kind of crazy because everybody knew at the point before the war started 100 years ago there was, we'll say, political unrest. Everybody knew that things were kind of gearing up towards a war. And at that point, I think that's when the air nomads had decided, all right, let's bring everybody back in, let's get back to our temples, and that's what fucked them up.
Yeah.
So what I have in front of Christian right now is I just brought up a map of the unnamed Avatar world just to get a better idea of what we're looking at.
It's quite beautiful.
So you see the Fire Nation off to the west over there. They have their islands stretching out to looks like the Mosei Sea.
You might add, just before you get into it too far, what we're looking at is actually... It's not the stylized ink map that you see at the beginning of the Avatar show. This is actually kind of a very well done, concise, because the map of the Avatar world, especially considering they don't have a continent or anything, is kind of left to mystery for the vast majority of it. So to see it kind of illustrated is kind of cool. So I would encourage anybody who wants to find a reference for it. It's pretty good.
Oh yeah, I'll be putting the PowerPoints with the episodes as well, and I believe this was a fan-made map, so credit will need to be given for whoever made this map because it's really, really good.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, so you see the Fire Nation off to the west. You have the Earth Kingdom comprising of almost all the entire contiguous land to the east. You do see the air nomad temples just kind of split up into their respective directions, and then you have the northern and southern water tribes to the north and south. And I believe, right there, you see the Foggy Swamp.
Hey, my boy.
So they're almost kind of in the middle of the two water tribes. So it's kind of cool.
Which kind of makes sense of why they were stumbled upon so early in the show.
Yep. Yeah.
I also forgot, by the way, this is just an aside, I forgot how big the Fire Nation was.
Oh yeah.
Because it's one of those things that, the show does a very good job of making sure that the Fire Nation appears as like an enigmatic force that seems nearly limitless and constantly around you. But you don't realize that they're actually a physical body that is just
they make up land
mass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Earth Kingdom's huge. They're 3-4 times the size of the Fire Nation, but the Fire Nation's still the second largest.
I think that if the Earth Kingdom was more united as a whole, and not as disparate, they might have stood a better chance.
Well, I mean, they withstood the last 100 years.
Oh yeah, no, in terms of like repelling it for good.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Keeping them from coming back, you know.
I mean, I think that probably bled into why the Fire Nation chose that time to strike, simply because I think at that time there was.
I mean, there's a lot of logic in terms of, even though it's a kids show, there's a lot of logic in that.
Yeah, they didn't just do it. They just do it.
Honestly, yeah. Now
that we've gone through kind of the world building of the show itself, we're gonna start getting into the nitty gritty. And the first question is, what the fuck is the Avatar? We mentioned it briefly. We mentioned it briefly once or twice. The Avatar is the only person within the Avatar universe who can bend all 4 elements. The Avatar began with the first Avatar, Huan. Yeah, what's up?
I would also like to add, not only is he the only one that can, he or she, are the only ones that can do all 4, they're the only ones that can even do 2.
So, unless you're the Avatar, you're only going to be, if you're a bender and you're not the Avatar, you're only going to be bending to one element.
Yeah.
No matter what variation.
It's not like Naruto where you can learn a couple different chakra natures. No, this is like, you, sir, are...
When you're Earth, you're Earth.
When you do the little spinning rock trick that Aang does, that's all you can do.
That's it. You can't do anything else. No. You can't use a glider. You can't... The Avatar's origins begin with the first Avatar, Huan. Huan fused with Rava. Rava is the spirit of light and peace for all of humanity. And all of this was explained in Legend of Korra.
I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't mention that almost at all.
Not in the slightest. Yeah. Nope. After Huan, the spirit of Rava and the Avatar spirit, so to speak, would begin this cycle of reincarnation throughout the different elemental nations.
So if you're just starting the show with us right here, you got a ways to go.
Yeah. The Avatar cycle began with Juan. Juan began, his very first element was fire. He was a firebender originally prior to becoming the Avatar. So that is the cycle following him is for where the Avatar is born into, follows his pattern of how he learned the elements. So the next Avatar after Juan would be an Airbender, the next Avatar after that would be a Waterbender, and the next Avatar after that would be an Earthbender, going back after that to a Firebender.
So it went from a Waterbender to Kyoshi, who is an Earthbender, to Roku, who is a Firebender, to Aang, Airbender, and then later on, eventually down the line, Korra. 70 years to the future would be Korra.
Yeah, so speaking exactly to that, the reason why the Fire Nation attacked the Air Nomads at the beginning of the war is they were trying to stop the reincarnation of the Avatar. They knew the last Avatar Roku, he was a Firebender originally, so they knew once he died, he would be reincarnated as an Air Nomad. So that's why they genocided the Air Nomads.
Very much like a biblical way of going about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the what was it, Old Testament, where there was a king who tried to kill off all the babes.
Oh yeah,
to stop that he was going to be the chosen one. So
oh yeah, it's exactly the same kind of what is it, like attempt to like divert
dire
destiny.
straits, yeah.
And they do it also control destiny or some shit.
Yeah, they do it also in Game of Thrones, I believe, which is gruesome because Game of Thrones doesn't censor anything, so they just show you stabbing babies in like houses and all this stuff. You're like, what the fuck? Yeah. I don't really like Game of Thrones, so I apologize to the Game of Thrones fans, but that's a little too much.
The reason why the Avatar is such an important figure is because regardless of nation, or we should say starting element that they're born into, they transcend those national borders to essentially be an agent for the world. They attempt to maintain world peace, and they're a protector of humanity, so to speak. They don't cater to any one singular nation, regardless of whether or not that was their origin nation. They're also considered the bridge between the human and spirit world. They have full access to, well, obviously the human world, but they also have full access to the spirit world in many different regards. So they kind of maintain that connection for both humans, because there are other humans who can, I believe, access and somewhat see into the spirit world as well, but the Avatar is quite a different beast.
There's also, if I'm correct in saying, actually, no, you're about to go into it. Never mind.
The theme continues.
I was gonna say,
our second theme. We have two themes. One is to say what the fuck, and the other one is to jump ahead of the other person.
Anyone that's
fucking hysterical.
Anyone that's listened to all our episodes, you know this is the price we pay.
We're not just making this shit up. So there's one other ability that is exclusive to the Avatar, short of the fact that they can bend all 4 elements. And that ability is something that's called the Avatar State. The Avatar State is the Avatar's strongest ability. It allows the Avatar to channel cosmic energies and the knowledge of all their previous past lives. So the only person who would not have been able to utilize that would be Juan, the first Avatar, because he had nobody else to kind of back him up.
I am the template.
But immediately after Juan, the second Avatar would then have access to Juan's experience and knowledge. While in this state, the Avatar can bend elements that perhaps their current life was not trained in. We see this a couple times with Aang, where the very first times he's shown in the Avatar state, he's waterbending, even though at that point he has done actually zero training in waterbending.
Yeah, honestly, I think that was because he didn't even use waterbending to make the bubble to begin with. That was making air in the ocean, right?
It looked like that, but I think later on it was found out that he had waterbended. He spoke to it because there was an episode where they tried to go into the Avatar state itself. There was I think it was an Earth Kingdom general that was trying to help Aang harness the Avatar state. So he was asking him, like, all the times he's done it. He's like, yeah, when I'm doing it, that's when I can bend, elements that, because they were like, well, we need to train him in all these elements. It's like, well, not if he's in the Avatar state, because then he can just do it. And that's when they brought up the different examples of when he was doing things.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I don't know if he well, actually, maybe he did bend the water around him, because then he turned that into ice.
Yeah, there would have been some other bending
so I guess
air that would have gone on, because simply creating an air bubble would not have changed the water's
the logistics
constant.
of it.
Yeah. Regardless of that, the Avatar state is also a defense mechanism, so the Avatar will essentially kick it on during times of mortal danger or high emotional stress, which is where we see the Avatar state utilized mostly.
Just fairly ironic.
What's that?
Because that's where you have the most lethality potential. Because if you're in the Avatar state, you get killed off. Ends it.
Oh yeah. Well, he's speaking of it
again. There's a certain irony.
Yeah. With training, the Avatar can access the Avatar state at will. And as Christian was mentioning, even though it is the Avatar's greatest strength, it is also its greatest weakness. If an Avatar is killed while in the Avatar state, it cuts off the reincarnation cycle, and the Avatar will be no more.
Holy shit. Jumped right ahead there.
Yes, you did. That is okay.
To the next step.
Now that we have a nice little bit about background, world building, structure framing, scaffolding, all that bullshit, let's get into it. That's Rava, and that's not Rava. That's Rava plus not Rava. That's all Avatar 1. I figured you wanted a picture of what Rava actually looked like, because she is a character. Both are brought out.
Looked like a goober.
He did. And he actually like a goober till like the very end, too. So the actual show itself, Avatar The Last Airbender, is split into 3 seasons. They're called quote-unquote books. So the very first book or season is Book 1, Water. Then you have Book 2, Earth, ending with Book 3, Fire.
It makes sense to have a book 4 air until you realize that they're all gone, so it would be a very short book.
Yeah. It's 1 page. They died.
It's Aang. Oh, okay, that's it.
Yeah. Season 1, or Book 1, Water, introduces all of our reoccurring protagonists and antagonists, as well as a multiple reoccurring B-list characters?
B-listers.
So when you're watching the show, you're obviously going to see the same intro scene every single time, but what Avatar did, which I don't know if any other show has done that I can think of, for their very first episode, they created a completely different
We've talked about this before. It's
episode
really cool.
intro. And I have that intro right here.
Oh, you found it.
Yeah, dude.
Water. Earth. Fire. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days, a time of peace, when the Avatar kept balance between the Water Tribes, Earth Kingdom, Fire Nation, and Air Nomads. But that all changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar mastered all 4 elements. Only he could stop the ruthless firebenders. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years have passed, and the Fire Nation is nearing victory in the war. 2 years ago, my father and the men of my tribe journeyed to the Earth Kingdom to help fight against the Fire Nation, leaving me and my brother to look after our tribe. Some people believe that the Avatar was never reborn into the Air Nomads and that the cycle is broken. But I haven't lost hope. I still believe that somehow the Avatar will return to save the world.
Yeah, yes, that is the intro for the very first episode.
You know, it never occurred to me that Sokka has had the same haircut since he was like 2 years old.
Since day one?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, because every time when they show in flashbacks,
Yeah,
he
with
still has
they
same-
had the little.
Well,
kid
so with
version.
Guitar too. Her hair just gets longer.
Yeah,
It's
the
still the
ponytail
same.
just gets long.
And
that's all
Aang's
it
always
is.
bald. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Very simple. Simple exercises for that.
Yeah, immediately after the first episode, we're introduced to the character himself.
Sorry, I read the caption. My apologies.
Yeah, so immediately upon the first episode, we're introduced to the main protagonist. So you have the speaker who we just listened to, who is Katara, and her brother Sokka. They are two members of the Southern Water Tribe. And in the first episode, they meet the then supposedly disappeared, lost Avatar, who is in the form, this time, of a 12-year-old boy named Aang. He is an airbender. He is, exactly as the show says, the last airbender. He somehow escaped the genocide of his people at the Fire Nation.
Now, this might sound like a dumb question. Was Roku's death known widely throughout the continents? Or were they looking for...
I would say no.
Because I'm pretty sure it would have been a shock to be like, whoa, there's an airbender. And then like 2 seconds later, whoa, he's the Avatar, you know what I mean? Because it's not like you instantly see like this character and you're like, oh, he's presumably the Avatar. Because they were looking for a guy named Roku or whatever.
Are you saying in this time or 100 years ago?
I'm saying like 100 years ago. Like, was it no? Because I know the Fire Nation knew because they were trying to kill the Airbenders. But did everybody know that the past Avatar had passed away, and that was now trickling down to Airbender?
I would say when it happened, because this is a little bit of a spoiler, but they go into it during the show. I think it's in the 3rd season. They go into the history of Roku quite a bit, and then they go into when he perished, and he died as a direct result of the current Fire Lord Sozin's hand. I don't think at that point anybody outside of the Fire Nation had known. There weren't really many people inside the Fire Nation that knew. Sozin knew. I would say Roku's wife and probably anybody else who escaped Roku's island, they knew. So I'm assuming that was done purposefully. And then the organization of the army and the direct attack on the air nomads happened immediately afterwards. So yeah, at that point still I think anybody inside the Fire Nation would be the only people who knew. Mm-hmm. And I would just say everyone started to figure it out. It's like, you know, a year of war went by, 2 years of war, 10 years of war went by. It's like, well, okay, the Avatar's dead.
Wasn't Roku old as shit?
Well, and everybody would know. Everybody would have known the last Avatar. So everybody would have known Roku was the last Avatar.
Exactly.
They would have known that he was a firebender. So they would have known that when he died, an airbender would have been the Avatar.
Man, I haven't seen I haven't seen Roku since Boomy was 5 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty clear what went on. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have figured or assumed that, okay, well, we haven't seen the Avatar, all the airbenders are gone, so the Avatar's dead.
But then there's the ironic twist where the Fire Nation thought that they killed the Avatar because the Avatar didn't appear for 100 years.
Yeah, he was gone. They kind of took it for granted because they never got the definitive proof that they had killed the Avatar. Granted, nobody'd seen him, so it was pretty good to assume.
Yeah, and obviously there's not anybody alive who knows what happens when you kill the Avatar. I feel like is something dramatic gonna happen?
And see,
I guess not.
The funny thing is, if they had killed Aang just as a baby, then it would have just been reincarnated. Would have just reincarnated into water. Yeah, so I think right out of the first gate in the very first episode, you meet the 3 main protagonists, and then you meet the two main antagonists, or at least the biggest antagonists for the entirety of the show.
Yeah, start to finish.
Yeah. So that's cute. Just jumped around. So you meet Katara, Aang, Sokka, accompanied by their animal companions. You have Momo, the flying lemur, and you have Appa, the flying bison. Appa is very important. He transports the group to all of their different adventures. Once Aang and
It is
Katara,
their only mode of transportation.
yeah. Once Aang, Katara, and Sokka kind of get their shit together, figure out their plan, the plan is exactly as what was done in the past, where, okay, Aang's the Avatar, so he needs to learn all the elements. So the entirety of the first season is dedicated to our group, dubbed Team Avatar, to get him to the Northern Water Tribe to find an eligible or an appropriate waterbending master for Aang to learn waterbending.
And I think that's a good point that you had mentioned this earlier, once they got their shit together, because I think what you mean by that as well is the idea that they were all on the same page and on the same goal. Because in actually, when I rewatched some of the beginning episodes of Avatar, I completely forgot how not on board Sokka was with any of this.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, his whole role was like he was like kind of coming of age, and his dad, all those the capable fighters of the group had left, and he was in charge.
Yeah.
Even though he kind of hyped it up a little bit too much. He
Right.
was just like, I am like the leader, and like, dude, you're like a teenager, man. What
And
you
like you're in charge of like women and like,
babies,
literal kids.
Because Katara, obviously is adventurous, and she was like, "Yo, we need to help this little bald dude," and he's like, "I don't know about this little bald."
Well, yeah,
dude.
everything that Sokka had prior to meeting Aang was still at home, so he didn't feel need to like, well, if I leave, who's gonna protect?
Exactly. So once they did align, which was a little bit later, things went a lot more smoothly. But in the beginning, there was like I think it was more of a distrust for Aang, and if he's like legit. To be fair, if I saw a random bald guy in a glacier come out, I'd probably
Well, I think Sokka's just a bit more of a realist versus like obviously his sister's all up into like the hope and this and like this is what needs in destiny. Like she's more into those ethereal, otherworldly forces versus Sokka's much more like a meat and potatoes kind of guy. Like he's like I'll see it when I believe it kind of a thing, or like if it's not my business, whatever it is. They're trying to set up the characters. They're trying to set up the world as they're going through. So they didn't really have a super goal short of getting Aang to the North Pole. Mm-hmm. So obviously chaos.
In fact, they met Momo by happenstance.
Oh yeah, he goes Aang because obviously he's not aware of everything that's been going on in the last 100 years. He's been frozen in ice.
Yeah.
So he goes to I think what was the first one they go to? Southern Air Temple to try and figure out what's going on. I believe that's the temple that Aang's from. And he goes. He wants to talk to the other Airbenders and then
see his old master.
And he did see his old master. I saw the bones of his old master. There wasn't.
That was always kind of a little bit shocking. It was never like too much. I would never say like they went a little too far with that. But I'm like, as a kid, I was like, whoa, they got a dead ass body here.
Well, yeah, because the runner.
This is Nickelodeon, right?
They run around this temple. You don't see anybody, and then Katara and Sokka actually do find evidence of a Fire Nation attack while they're exploring the temple. And they hide it from Aang. And finally, Aang brings to this chamber.
They see what, the helmet or something?
Some shit like that. And then Aang brings them to this secret chamber that's supposedly locked, and the only way that they can open it is if you're an airbender. So he opens the chamber, and what does he find? Aang finds his long-deceased master surrounded by dead Fire Nation soldiers. That was the second time that Aang enters the Avatar state. Short of those main protagonists, we are then introduced to the reoccurring antagonists of Prince Zuko and Uncle Iroh.
What the fuck is this?
It's just a bunch of pictures that I found. Feel free to flip through. I just got really bored. And every time I looked up Iroh...
Zuko, I'm literally fucking, bro.
Zuko, I'm literally bro.
That's amazing.
In the very first episode, we're introduced to the Fire Nation Prince Zuko. He is the direct son of the current reigning Fire Lord Ozai, as well as Prince Zuko's Uncle Iroh, who is brother to the Fire Lord.
A picture of Iroh in the levels killed me.
Of what?
A picture of Iroh in the lower levels killed me.
I'm literally bro.
Oh god.
Sokka and Katara and Zuko are actually the first people to realize that the Avatar is back.
Yeah, there is a major irony there.
Yeah, so Zuko, if you're wondering why there was a Fire Nation prince anywhere near the Southern Water Tribe, it's because he was disowned and kicked out of the Fire Nation by his own father. So his goal was to find and capture the Avatar, which his father sent him on, assuming it was an impossible task, and it ended up being that Zuko did discover the Avatar.
He has the darkest past of all Nickelodeon characters I've ever met.
I would say even shows outside.
Exactly.
Pretty rough.
Even like any of those for the most part. He got physically disfigured.
Yeah.
Assaulted by his father, abused by his father, stripped of his name, his dishonor, his rank, any respect people had of him. He
lost his mom.
Yeah, lost his mom. Was on his own. He had a dark past, and he had to kind of overcome that, and that was one of the greatest things about Avatar. And so Zuko's a beloved character, but he doesn't start off that way.
No, he is a righteous dickhead pretty much the entire first season. He's built to kind of hate him, kind of like Ahsoka. You just do not like him when you first meet him, and he kind of keeps that the whole time.
That's true. I hated Ahsoka when I first
everyone did. She was literally written that way.
The worst.
You do love his Uncle Iroh. His Uncle Iroh is a fantastic influence for Zuko, does his best to kind of keep him on course, to help him, training in firebending, all that sort of shit.
And it is interesting in terms of current modern day events. I was waiting to mention this. Speaking of reunion, we always love a reunion between Zuko and his Uncle Iroh. That has actually recently happened. All the voice actors from the original cast have met up at a Comic-Con. This is 2023. I think it was May 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of ironic that we're doing this right now when that just happened literally less than a week ago. Things coalesce, man, even though it's been 10 years or however long, even more.
2008 to 2013. So
yeah,
what is that?
15 years.
15 years, Jesus Christ. So, in the first episode, you meet the main protagonist, you meet the main antagonist, and then, throughout the season, you're introduced to, there's other, side antagonists, some more recurring than others that are to kind of keep, I think more essentially just to keep the presence of the Fire Nation known, because once you realize how much screen time Zuko and Iroh have, you realize they're not representative of the Fire Nation. They're their own thing. They got their own shit going on. And then there's also the Fire Nation on top of that, too. So I do believe I have, I suppose you could say the honorable mention characters that we see in the first season.
I'm insulted that you didn't include the best one.
Which one?
You know which one.
Cabbage Man?
Yeah.
I think I had it on a slide back. So it's Cabbage Man. I'm going to name him first.
Yeah, we're going to name him first. Get him out of the way first.
Cabbage Man.
Reed
has more screen time than any other character. In the first season, we also have reoccurring characters, but they don't reoccur until other seasons. We have Haru.
That is ironic.
I think Haru is one of the first ones they meet.
Yeah, it's within the first 5 episodes, I believe.
Yeah, he's a random earthbending kid that they meet.
And this is the point where they are capturing and imprisoning anybody that has any remote earthbending.
Yeah.
So him being seen by them was a major issue, and that's why he ran as soon as he saw them.
Yeah, they discovered Haru by himself. Practicing earthbending.
And Katara's nosy ass just goes in.
She's like,
"Hey, you were earthbending, weren't you?" His mom's just like, "What the?"
Yeah. Followed by Boomy, King Boomy, the Mad King.
The man, the myth.
Boomy rules the second largest city of the Earth Kingdom, the city of Omashu, short of Bossing.
The shredded 112-year-old.
Yeah, the funny thing, spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen it, Boomy has known Aang from way back when they were kids. So Boomy's been alive this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
So he recognized Aang right away. He gave him some really random tests, and then the last test was to kind of guess Boomy's name, which Aang somehow managed to do, because, that's fine. But Boomy is a great character. Master Earthbender, which you find out.
Yeah.
Much to Aang's dismay.
There's not many, I know we're strictly talking about season 1, but Aang has a earthbending companion named Toph, who is often in the conversation of Avatar considered the strongest earthbender of all time. Boomy is one of the few who's ever even entered the competition for number 1 earthbender.
Yeah.
So he definitely deserves his due.
Yeah, absolutely. We then are followed by the ultra douche Jet.
We have varying opinions, but yeah, Tyler does not like Jet.
He's just a dickhead. He has some beef with the Fire Nation, like everybody fucking does. But then he just takes it to extreme where he's just ready to douse and hose, quite literally hose an entire village, simply because
fight fire with fire.
Yeah, simply because there's a Fire Nation.
No pun intended.
So it's I don't know. I mean, he goes through some shit in the second season, but whatever. We're introduced also to Aang's past life, most recent past life, Avatar Roku. Very important character throughout the show. He helps Aang a lot in terms of his development, in terms of guiding him on where he needs to go.
He's also one of the main catalysts of the main storyline for the next 2 seasons.
Exactly, yeah, I was about to say quite literally, so thank you for doing that thing of jumping ahead. In Season 8, The Winter Solstice, which was one of the first 2-part, which was...
Season 8?
Episode 8, Season 1. Oh man, there are 8 seasons.
I would love it if they had 8
Episode 8, Season 1 of Avatar Last Airbender is called The Winter Solstice.
Mm-hmm.
The gang took it upon themselves to visit the firebending, or Sozin's temple within the Fire Nation, to kind of, to get in touch with him because of how spiritually powerful everything was during the Winter Solstice. Aang did get in touch with Avatar Roku, and Avatar Roku's like, yeah, you gotta learn the other 4 elements. And Aang's like, great, and we're doing that. He's like, yeah, but you gotta do it by this time. And he gives him a time period, which is 8 months from now. And Aang's like, that's no way, that's not possible. And Avatar Roku's like, yeah, you're right, it's pretty impossible.
I'm gonna keep it 100.
And I was like, yeah, let me tell you, it takes years to learn all the elements, but you gotta do it in 8 months. No cap. And that's it, so funny. After Roku, we see one of my personal favorites, Zhong Zhong. Zhong Zhong is a disgraced exile of the Fire Nation. He was a leading general and a fantastic firebending master.
Literally has like, for given the gravitas of this character, he barely shows up.
Yeah, they shafted a number of really strong characters.
Like I almost forgot that he existed.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
We talked about this.
Like the dude shows up in like one of the last episodes of the first season, doesn't show up until the last episode.
Does not show up.
Until the last episode of the third season. Ridiculous. And then you have Suki, a bit of a fan favorite, a great girl, power girl.
Oh yeah.
Turns into Sokka's main chick, but she's really, really cool. They meet her pretty early on as well. She is part of this order called the Warriors Kyoshi. Mm-hmm. They worship Aang's second most recent past life, Avatar Kyoshi, who was an earthbending avatar, originally an earthbender. So they dress up with the whole makeup, the whole getup.
She was the first major slap in the face of Sokka's misogyny.
Oh yeah. Sokka has a very masculine exterior and tries to exude his manly manness. He's very Johnny Bravo.
He started out very much traditional roles of the men fight, women take care of the kids. That's basically about it.
And Suki and the Warrior Kyoshis are an all-female warrior
fighting group.
Yeah. And they whip his ass. So by the end of that episode, you actually see Sokka with all the makeup and stuff. It's hysterical.
Yeah.
One of the first growth moments for Sokka.
I was gonna say, a great growth moment for Sokka.
In multiple ways. One outside, one in his pants. Anyway.
Speaking of growth moments for Sokka. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did. We do have some other characters
on the screen right now,
somewhat reoccurring. Well, two of them are, one of them's not. By the time the season finale of
yeah, correct on all fronts, my friend.
By the end of the first season, the gang makes their way to the North Pole. They are successful. They are introduced to the Northern Water Tribe and those who inhabit the Northern Water Tribe. A fantastic two-part episode. It ends with a massive invasion of the Fire Nation, or by the Fire Nation of the Northern Water Tribe. We see Aang go full Avatar, turn into this huge-ass monster thing. We see the moon die. We see Sokka lose part of his life.
We see the moon die.
And we see some random misogynistic bullshit from the traditions of the Northern Water Tribe.
Yeah. Would you like to discuss the two characters on screen?
So the two characters I have on the screen, the first one to the left is Master Paku. He is I suppose, the greatest waterbending master of the time.
And one of the least liked in terms of the fan base.
Oh yeah, he's also straight douche material as well for the most part.
He's the worst, yeah.
He was willing to teach Aang, obviously, waterbending, which was fine. But then when Katara wanted to teach waterbending as well, he's like, oh yeah, we don't teach girls. That's yeah. So
very much the kind of the archetype from what Sokka would be constructed into.
Yeah.
Should he have gone down
the hyper masculinity that Sokka exudes, this is 10 times
kind of
as
cool,
much.
We literally see that deviation from the path that he would have followed. Would he be raised by these guys?
Yeah, because you see that when they get to the Northern Water Tribe, you see much more of a city versus like kind of a very rural slapdash of the Southern Water Tribe.
Yeah, exactly.
And you see a lot more rich tradition structure there. So one of the traditions is obviously like the men have their place, the women have their place. And so in this place, women do not learn waterbending as a defensive art in the Northern Water Tribe. They learn it for healing. Mm-hmm. So when Katara wanted to learn from Master Paku said no. Aang's like, oh, well, I'll just learn stuff from him and then I'll teach it to you. This was immediately discovered by Master Paku, and Master Paku was just like, well, fine, I'm not going to teach the Avatar and help save the world because you're a girl. It was the dumbest shit. Mm. That changed later on for other reasons. The other character we have on the screen is Yue? I'm not sure if I pronounced her name correctly. Regardless, she is the, I suppose, crown daughter of the Northern Water Tribe. She's the daughter of the Northern Water Tribe's chief. She looks very, very different. She has all white hair, so she looks very contrasting to much of the other characters. She's the same age as the other characters, and
she's got a high royalty.
Yeah, so she has high royalty, and then she also has some spiritual background, which you should definitely watch the show to find out why, because she's very important to, one, the culmination of the season, the victory of the battle it exudes, and I would say the existence of the world as we know it, so to speak.
She also has the. She's also one of the first of many of Sokka's woman interactions.
Suki's the first. She's the second, unless there was some other one thrown in between. But yeah, she was his first real love interest until she was no longer around to be that. Well, what I have now in front of us is a map showing Team Avatar's journey for all of Book 1. They start off in the Southern Water Tribe, which is where they meet Aang and where we are introduced to the antagonists Zuko and Iroh. The gang then makes their way to the Southern Air Temple, where Aang discovers his long-dead monk master, Monk Yatsu. From there, the gang travels to Kyoshi Island, where they are met with
the Kyoshi Warriors
and Sokka's first somewhat love interest.
His first smooch.
Suki. Yeah, he got a smoochie from Suki. And then from there, they make their way to Omashu, where they meet Boomy.
Actually, I never realized how close Omashu is to the swamp people.
Yeah, they crossed over the swamp shit to get to Omashu. And then there's the Lover's Pass.
Oh yeah, that's the one that I always talk
with
about.
the guitar
and the guitar, the hippie guy and the pregnant woman.
Yeah.
Very random interaction.
And then I don't see where they went here. I think this is where they met Haru afterwards. Because their village was a coastal village.
Yeah, still in the Earth Nation off the coast, yep.
And then something
happened. And in that episode, George Takei randomly appears. George Takei voices.
Oh, he was the warden.
He voices the warden out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yep.
Star Trek legend just out of nowhere. It's just like, I'll play a random ass villain. Oh my.
I heard you've been earthbending. And then some shit. Oh yeah, this is where, I don't know if you remember the episode where I think Aang first goes into the spirit world. Crazy fucking beast was attacking that village, and then it turns out it was a panda. That's when he first meets Roku's dragon.
Is it weird that the only part about that I remember is that it ended up being a panda?
No, that's fine.
I don't remember virtually any of that episode except for the panda.
This is where in this episode, that's where Aang discovered he was given a message by Roku to meet Roku at his temple on the winter solstice to get the information that which we talked about afterwards. That he needs to
dragon.
Yeah, exactly. So from this episode, Aang learns to talk to Roku. Next episode, he talks to Roku, and that's when he learns his timeline for learning the elements.
Word.
From there, we head into this place, and then from this place, there's that bullshit episode that I hate called The Great Divide. If you've never seen the show, obviously watch it. If you've seen it before, feel free to skip it. It's a stupid episode.
We have that one audience member. That was my favorite episode.
Yeah, well, who cares? They kind of zigzag all over the place. At some point, they meet Jet. A bunch of other shit happens too, and then the second to last stop they make before the Northern Water Tribe is a pretty important episode. Actually, is they get to the Northern Air Temple. And this is when they discover that there are people flying around the air temple, so Aang gets excited thinking it's airbenders, and then it turns out it's not.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they have the contraptions.
Yep. It turns out there's no airbenders whatsoever. It's simply these people have taken up shop there, and the leader of them is some guy who's not named. He's just like an inventor. So he's a guy who goes on. He's met in other seasons as well. But the development of the airship is also by this man. This is when the Fire Nation gets a hold of airship technology, which we see later on in the show. And then that's where they leave off before they...
You know that episode kind of reminded me of the energy of that guy? Reminded me of Welcome to Iego. Like the freaking Clone Wars episode where they repurposed those old droids.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like a random inventor dude just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, just some dude just doing his thing. Just making all this shit.
Yeah,
that was a crazy episode. And then after
then finally, we are in the Arctic
season finale of the Northern Water Tribes. Bullshit. That's all I have for you. I don't know if you have any other things to kind of wrap things up, things you have questions about, things you might want to answer, things we didn't talk about.
Well, it's kind of cool in terms of, this whole been very informative because they just like a lot of shows out there, they don't focus too heavily on the maps themselves. I feel like maybe out of fear that it might seem constricting to be like, all right, we can only go here or here, trying to keep that mystery of travel still alive. But going, all these years later, referring back to it, it's kind of interesting because you do notice those small tidbits. Like you notice that Sokka and Katara at the beginning of the Southern Water Tribe, they have those heavy coats on,
Yeah.
and then we're in like their Earth Kingdom, like Katara has her nice like blouse or whatever.
Yeah.
And Sokka has kind of like a decent one. So like it's interesting to think about all these things. Because
what gives
don't pay
change to the
attention
things
to
you're
it.
seeing on screen?
Yeah,
where they are, because you never know where exactly they are
Yeah.
unless they say it. But even then, that doesn't give you a point of reference. It just tells you that, oh, now we're in the Earth Kingdom. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
It's
see
just
exactly
like
what you're saying.
People, I forget what it was, but like he says like, I think I saw an interview with them, and it said like from like the moment that they started like coming up with an episode, it would be like 9 months until like the whole thing's out and like premiered and stuff. So like they think about like all the nuances in this for a long time.
Yeah. Which of course you don't realize or see when you're watching the show.
No, because it's so fast. It's like 20
especially
minutes.
with Avatar. Like this map that we're looking at was not made by the creators of Avatar. It was made by some dude out there.
Some dude.
Who I got to give credit to, because he made a fantastic fucking map. Except the arrows. I did the arrows, so that's mine.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
But what's really cool is in this first season, they go all over the place. So they start in the Water Tribes. They spend a lot of time in the Earth Kingdom. They actually end up going into the Fire Nation for a little bit, where the Crescent Island is for the Winter Solstice.
Yeah.
Back into the Earth Kingdom, and they're back in the Water Tribes. So they go all over the place.
Yeah, they visited all 4 elements. First season.
Yep.
Which is exactly what you would hope for in a season.
Yeah, and this is just the first season. So then in the second seasons, they go into different areas, because there are places of the Earth Kingdom that were not touched. I don't even think some of them were even talked about in the first season. And then obviously the third season, you get more into a lot of other things, which I'm excited for. So Christian, do you have anything else to add to our thoughts, theories, opinions, production analysis, story dissection?
I don't think so. I think we're going to go into our thoughts, theories, and opinions on another episode.
Absolutely.
Sorry, so these the opinion side.
Yeah.
For now, I think that very much well wraps up season 1. Hopefully you guys go out and watch it. We didn't spoil it too much for you.
Yeah.
So you should have plenty to go into and, of course, enjoy.
We did definitely do a good wrap up. We did not talk about the second season. I think we did a really good job of spoilers. So if you're not interested in spoilers, do not watch our second episode where we talk about our thoughts, theories, opinions.
Oh yeah, that's no hold barred.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nope.
Yeah, no, we throw no punches.
You are gonna be learning a lot more than maybe you want to. But if you are interested in our thoughts,
you're done
theories,
watching
opinions, want to contribute your own, please check out that second episode. And as always, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Pandora Rising.